So I am in Sequoia National Park. These are the largest trees in the world. And they illustrate something really cool about trees, which is that they don't actually need their insides. Because the only part of the tree that's moving is this edge around the rim of xylem and phloem. And so on the inside of the tree, when they get big enough like this, it can be completely hollow. So this tree is actually 3 trees that have fused together. And there's this whole space. You could live inside if you wanted. So trees are really special because they can get really wide, and so I'm going to show you how to do that. Look down here. So all plants have 2 kinds of vascular tissue. They've got xylem, which is here, and they've got phloem, which is here. In order for a tree to get some bulk, it needs to be able to grow from the base. So to do that, there's a layer of cells right here that can divide into 1 or 2 types. They can divide into xylem, in which case they go here, or they can divide into phloem, and they can go here. So the phloem transports the sugars, and so it moves sugars up and down from the leaves to the roots, whereas xylem transports water, so it takes water from the soil and it brings it up. As the tree is growing, every year it adds a new layer of xylem cells around the exterior of this cylinder. So you can see this is the famous tree rings. You can count how old the tree is based on the number of rings that it has. These are rings of xylem. Whereas also every year it's adding phloem, but it's adding phloem to the inside of this ring. So as the phloem gets added on, it pushes the older phloem out, which is why the bark of trees has all this cracked, gnarled features. So the xylem gets added to the outside of the cylinder, the phloem gets added to the inside of the cylinder, and that's how the tree gets wider. And so that's what will eventually make a tiny tree like this into a huge thing like that. I don't even know what I want to say. This tree behind me is over 1,500 years old, which means that when this tree was a sapling, Muhammad wasn't around. What else wasn't here? The Roman Empire was still standing. This is a very, very old creature. Sequoias, like all other pines, are gymnosperms, which means that unlike most of the plants you see, they don't make flowers, although they do make seeds. So the seeds that they make come in these cones. And way, way up there are pollen-producing structures. So unlike a flower, which has male and female parts all in one, in gymnosperms they've got the pollen stuff, and then the female stuff are separate organs. And so these cones get pollinated, and then seeds form in all these individual creases. And then the tree drops the cone, and the seed germinates, and a new pine grows. So these little red things here are the male structures of one of these big pine trees. So it's not a flower, it's a pollen-bearing structure. So you see I'll rip it up, and there's little yellow bits on the inside. And what happens is when this is up in the trees, this will shake and pollen will come out of it, and it will land inside one of these pine cones, which are the female structures. So when these are green, they get full of sap, and the pollen drops into them and fertilizes the seeds that are kept inside. Now there aren't any seeds in this one, because this one I found it on the ground, but the pollen fertilizes the seeds, and the seeds develop inside the pine cone, and then some other forest creatures fish the seeds out and plant them like little gnomes. So I've got some leaf samples here for you. These are all gymnosperms, so they're all evergreens. So they stay green all year long, but they're very different. So this is a giant sequoia, and here is something very similar. This is an incense cedar. So you can see they have the same sort of green stemmy pattern to them. And then you can contrast that with this, which is a pine, with the long needles, and this, which is a fir with the shorter needles. So these are all closely related plants, but they have very different leaves.